Thank you. So we are bombarded with information about AI. There is not a week without a new conference, a new webinar, a new press release, a new Substack article about AI trending on the internet. Now, this information ranges from sales pitch, hype, hot air, to inspirational, visionary presentations on the potential of AI, how AI will change the world. And as we move forward on the hype curve, we also now see emerging more and more information from the shop floor, from the people who actually work with AI, trying to test what works and what doesn't work. And this is shows us consistently, as we are hearing nowadays, that we are not still there, or we're not there yet. There are things that can go wrong and things do go wrong. So monitoring this is essential. And that poses a challenge because we are talking about totally new workflows. And in that context, I have the pleasure to introduce this panel, which consists of three persons who for decades have been shaping the localization industry, working for or with many of the major buyers and providers. Kateřina GAŠOVÁ is an authority in translation and localization quality management. She is the founder of Moravia at the time. She has been in RWS. She's currently a quality management strategist in Argos Multilingual. Pavel SOUKENÍK is a language technology expert, a global solutions manager at Acolad, based in Seattle, where he also is an adjunct lecturer at the University of Washington. And Agustín da FIENO DELUCCHI is a data scientist, 20 years in Microsoft, and also based in Seattle. Now, for the last year or so, they have been collaborating, trying to come up with ideas on how to evaluate multimodal AI-generated content. If you don't know what that means, don't worry, you will in half an hour or so. But the thing is that so far they have only presented their work in very select, to very select audiences, like Lockworld, where you have to pay considerable amounts of money to get in. So it's a real privilege for us today to be able to listen to what they have come up with. And with this, I give you the floor, Pavel. Thank you. And by the way, and thank you so much for making this effort to come here. Katka is not so far, but Pavel and Agustín have crossed continents and oceans to get here. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much. As you said, our focus has been on two things. When the content is multimodal and when it's generated by AI. And you can see it everywhere. From AI-generated videos, just this week I saw news articles, Coca-Cola, their holiday new ad commercial on TV spot is completely AI-generated. There's some controversy about it, of course. We're not going to be talking about the controversies, where and when you should and should not use AI. We're going to talk about, well, when you do have content that's audio, video, sign language, everything combined with text, how do you evaluate it? And also, we've been evaluating quality for years comparing the result against the source. But what do you do when there is no source? How do you measure quality then? So that's something we worked on together. And I would like to start with a poll, just to measure, what level of experience so far have you had with creating content by prompting AI, dealing with content that's artificially generated. And as I tell you that, so yesterday we took the materials we put together for our quality framework and our discussions and so on, we put it into an AI tool to ask it to generate a video with visuals and narration, and the results were embarrassing. But they were embarrassing for me, not for the AI, because I was like, okay, they're doing better. So, okay, majority of people have not done that yet, or haven't heard of it, some occasionally. So hopefully this is going to be useful, if not now, then hopefully in the near future. So with that, can we switch back to the presentation? And I would like to ask Katka to walk us through, because we also don't feel like we need to throw everything away. We spent like 2 days already talking about a lot of topics about quality. What still works?
Hello everyone, nice morning to all of you. And well, let me start with a simple statement. I am very much privileged and honored to be part of what's cooking in the MQM kitchen. And MQM is the key model that is currently being used for textual evaluations in most of the cases. It has also been reflected in the ISO 5060 that was discussed the other day. So there is a lot of stuff and guidance and rules and inspiration available already in the industry. Now, what do we do with that? So my story is very simple with that. About half a year ago or a year ago, I was approached, or my team was approached by one of the clients we are working for and for who we had developed an MQM-based quality evaluation framework for different content types and use cases before. And now their challenge was, oh my gosh, our key stakeholders and company management, they are going for AI-generated videos. They are exploring what's available in the market, and now we have been asked to come up with the evaluation system. And how do we judge this makes sense or this doesn't make sense for us at all to use it? Or do we need humans at all? Or is it just every marketing manager clicks a button and hey, there is a video and it can be broadcasted to the whole world? So this is the idea behind why I've started working on this topic, or I've started exploring this. And my colleagues, Pavel and Agustín, accidentally have been working on the same thing over the ocean. So basically, how do we transform what already exists, for instance, in MQM? And MQM is not just the core typology that we know as MQM core, ISO 5060, but it's a broad typology. It's a broad cookbook that gives us options to pick whatever we need and for our particular use case, and to give us the opportunity to build our custom evaluation model. And this was the trigger for us how to move from the linear flat evaluation of text into transforming quality, perspective of quality into layers. Layers of foundation, layers of presentation, and layers of effect. And with that, we will be exploring that further on, because another goal of us was how to combine the worlds of the buyers, buyer executives, to be able to tell a simple story on the data, how to understand quality from our quality manager's perspective, how to bring in the user, how to bring in you, translators and linguistic and language professionals, so that you understand what matters from other angles than just language clarity and accuracy and perfection. And then how to have sufficient data points to collect data, because only if you have solid data, you can build a simple, shining story and can influence the management the way you want to.
So just very briefly, so the things that we felt we want to extend are addressing the multimodal nature, so audio images, making the model modular. As I already said, what do you do when there is no source? And to do it at scale, because now it's very easy to generate close to real-time videos, personalized in education for other use cases, and how to enable different approaches to the evaluation, including holistic and analytic. And Agustín, would you like to speak a little bit about the philosophy behind it?
Right, absolutely. First of all, morning everyone. It's an honor to be here. I'm very humbled by your invitation. So when we started talking about this, we realized that we need to start with intent as part of purpose. It's a bit of a nuance between the two, but I think that staying too high level on just the purpose wouldn't give us enough for us to evaluate. And that's why the intent has to be more clearly specified for the specific task that we want to evaluate. So where we see at the intersection of the inputs and the output we want to obtain, and this very specific intent is what give us what we are proposing that will give us a good idea of the quality of one piece of content that we are evaluating.
So, if we start with purpose and intent, it means we have to understand the requirements and the expectations. Yet again, we already know about standards that are available for us. ISO 11669, ISO 5060 that I've referred to a couple of times by now. It means that defining intent, defining purpose is actually defining a project specification, and only if the buyer and the provider, whoever it is, are aligned on what the intent is, who is the end user, who is the recipient of the content, and also what are the risks if something goes wrong. And with AI, there are numerous risks. Not only speaking about legal consequences, we also know about reputational consequences, about the consequence that is triggered by insufficient like cultural awareness, cultural appropriateness of the content, or even if the voice sounds funny. And we heard about this, how important, yesterday, how important it is to listen to a natural voice, natural pronunciation, natural tonality. But what's behind it is also to understand how do we get there, because as part of the AI-generated videos or content localization or creation or life cycle workflow, we need to go through many different tweaks, and we will be talking about this if there is time later. So basically, project specification is a must. We need to understand the rules. We need to define on what matters for the particular use case, which out of the elements and attributes are the critical ones. So what to pick out of the framework that we've put together and what to measure and when. So, yeah.
Yes, so how do we then even propose to extend the current standards? And I think that's what we're trying to do, is design some methodology. And in designing that methodology, we know that we have to address, as we were saying initially, these semantics, this intent, but also understanding the complexities of the multimodality. And that's what we have come up with, which is a multi-layer model, where we start with the foundational aspects of it. that that if the quality is not met at this level, you can continue to evaluate. But at that point, you know that what has been produced is not really at the quality level that it should be. So it's this fundamental layer which talks about the normative integrity and the factual and ethical integrity, the truths, is fundamental into the evaluation of this model. Then you can continue, so long as that is properly assessed and satisfactory, then you can move into a presentation layer, particularly talking about the coherence between the different aspects of multimodality. That is not only just evaluating separately the video or the imagery or the voice or the sound, is all together, do they really convey together what we wanted to experience? And then the experience and engagement is seeing how is that going to be perceived by the end users.
And so I started as a translator, and for me the normative integrity, that's kind of where I always lived. And I think there was a movement in my thinking over the last year, because Agustín was like, no, the thing that's at the top, that's like, how does it resonate? What is the effect of it? We've heard during this conference, content has a job. I was initially a little skeptical, not that I don't believe in it, but I'm so used to, for years and years, this is how we evaluate quality. How many errors? Is it accurate? So you can see some of these dimensions and categories that we included in the multimodal evaluation framework. And some of these, I'm sure, look familiar, and there is a good reason, right? Because we didn't invent all of these. Katko, would you like to talk about basically how it works in practice?
So we are going to present actually or refer to two practical implementation use cases. Agustín will show an example of, say, I would call it holistic evaluation. So when you don't have time to evaluate the multimodality within the timeline. Remember, we have moved from textual evaluation to the dimensional layers, and then we have the quality perspectives, the standard quality perspectives spread across the individual layers, and then we need to spread everything within a timeline, which means that in practical terms, it often happens that the life cycle of AI generation of a video might happen at once, but it can be also split into separate phases. So the cases that we've been evaluating are cases where we get the video that is fully automatically generated by AI, and then we have opportunity to go backwards and decompose the video. And it starts with decomposing the source, repurposing the source for different cultures, for different localities, for different regions. Then it's about AI translation of the repurposed source and evaluation, standard quality evaluation that we already know with MQM criteria, for instance, reduced to what really matters. So the typical counting of errors. Then another layer is being added, or another perspective, which is the evaluation of the audio and video effects that uses different elements. For that, interestingly, you have to go back to the text, and very often you have to kind of distort the originally evaluated text. You have to intentionally introduce various errors to guide AI, like errors, I mean, you have to add several exclamation marks, several question marks. You have to add additional spaces. You have to capitalize something that would be wrongly capitalized if it was like presented as a final output. And then you, after you have done these individual pieces of evaluations, and in our slides, we also attempt to show how the evaluation can be broken down in terms of error categories and how those problems are mapped towards the building blocks of our framework. Then you compose it together and then you apply the holistic evaluation Agustín will be talking about.
Yes, so putting this into practice, what we wanted to show you is an example of a very simple advertisement for perfume. This is that kind of market, and you can see all the different layers, but there's the description of what is it that was intended with this campaign. It's a very short video that we'll watch.
Mist. Breathe in the extraordinary.
Right. It's just as simple as that. It's an ad like that. So how do we go about this? And I think that the framework we are proposing is actually technology agnostic. Imagine that you watch that video on a VHS, and all you have at your disposal is pen and paper. You can do it and evaluate it in the same way. And I think that is what I call peeling the onion, is basically going into decomposing what we are seeing, because we do this as humans. If we were to review this with pen and paper, we can do it in the same way. We can hear what is being said, what type of music, we can see the scenery, we can see the movement, we can see what the people were wearing, and all this. So the idea is that we decompose first, and then we transform that decomposition, making it sense into a common layer that we are normalizing for evaluation. So that's kind of the basis of this. And you can do this fully manually or with the assistance of some other tools. But that's the principle, is decomposition, transformation, and then normalization to then attempt to score it.
And then you score it against those dimensions.
Correct. And this is just a simple example of the scoring of this particular video. And we're going to see, if you evaluate it from the perspective of the of German for Germany, the campaign is a no-go just because of the name, that we know that mist means manure. So it's definitely a no-go. So the idea is this, is like when you start evaluating these after decomposing the layers, you can then categorize it. By the way, in the methodology we are proposing, the scale that you see, we have used a Likert scale from 1 to 5, but you can customize it to use 0 to 1, 0 to 100. You basically define that yourself. And one important thing, this is kind of a flat weighting of the parameters, but the idea is that you can also add weights. And we usually go for the whole normative and ethical integrity as the heaviest of all, but also blocks the workflow, because something that doesn't pass that layer is basically a no-go. And you can see also the example of the different evaluation for a different market, in this case in Japan.
And essentially, so then the holistic analytical approach is you can ask AI to convert the music, convert the visuals into textual description, and then automatically evaluate with AI. So that process can be fully automated, or that process can use human reviewers, or a combination of the two.
Correct.
And I think we have 2 slides, but I do want to get to Q&A and give it back to Ingemar. So I will just, if you're watching on video on YouTube, you can pause and read through how these map to some existing models. So this is a frame freeze moment. But I'd like to get to questions, and we also have Slido for your questions and with some additional poll.
Thank you very much. It is very interesting to see both the continuity with regard to what we were discussing yesterday, as you said, the foundations with and also this extension, and also the combination of analytic and holistic, which is a kind of holistic being a kind of validation of the analytic, which also is totally in line with, as you said, with the methodology or principles of 5060, ISO 5060 or MQM. I wonder, you mentioned, I think Katka, you mentioned the risk aspect. I mean, we heard also yesterday the importance of specifications. You are totally on that track as well. And risk assessment and risk identification and risk determination of risk tolerance levels is important, of course. But you mentioned something, I mean, what is there anything, is there particular risk aspects involved in AI? Could you expand on that?
Thank you, Ingemar, for this question. Yeah. Quality management is risk management. Let me put it as simple as this statement is. So if it comes to whatever involvement of technology and also whatever involvement of humans, we have to think of risks because every human can make mistakes, and it applies for technology even more. When considering the risks, again, it's part of the specifications because in ISO 11669, we have heard and we have seen examples of how to tackle risk management and how to define risks. So we heard yesterday about AI bias, which is one of the key risks, but there is, of course, many others risks applicable for videos. I noticed the risks which are related to language interference, which are, so it means that AI automatically uses the patterns from the originally source language and applies those for target languages. I saw it for German in the absolutely incorrect use of phrasal words. It also applies the source patterns and the bias coming from visuals, color coding of video, or even the naturalness of the tone of the speaker and naturalness of the voice. So all of those are the parameters that one should think of when designing the video or when thinking of who's gonna be the recipient of the video, what's the shelf life of the video, what's the intended impact, business impact of the video, and so meaning what are the consequences of potential risks in different markets.
Do you want to add anything on risks, AI-specific risks?
Absolutely, and they are everywhere. As Katka was saying, it's super important that we hold the reins of the use of AI. You know, we saw validation after, but there is a lot to do before that, to make sure that the output is already at quality. And that's the evaluation, you know. We've heard it from Krista before. It's like we need to constantly evaluate this and see if that meets our requirements first before doing that, but you still want to evaluate after, you know, and it's super important. And it's probably a segue to the first question that we have there on Slido, which is considering all these issues, the risk, hallucination, bias, isn't this a step back from progress if we're just saying that we generate content without sources? And I think that the important differentiation that I make is that AI doesn't create. Okay? AI does not create. Everything that the particularly generative AI is bringing us is a collection of things that have been created by humans. Yes, it looks like magic, looks like something new, right? But everything that is provided to us by generative AI exists somewhere because that data was trained. And if you ask for something that is not in that training corpus, it may come up with something, but it doesn't mean that it's new or what I consider creation. I think that's a very important distinction to make, that we can control the outputs. We have to do quite a bit of effort in doing it, but we can control the outputs. And I think that's for me an important decision. We need to put efforts before, but also after.
You inspired me to mention that, in my view, AI doesn't create, AI generates. And generates by picking from whatever has been created by humans everywhere. And we should be aware of this fact, because this is actually the difference, and this is the biggest risk when we do not introduce humans into content creation life cycle.
Yesterday, no, on the first day in the morning, we were talking about clear language. An extension of the clear language thinking is, I mean, the justification for why clear language is important. If we take that a bit further to inclusion and accessibility, I mean, not in the general language sense, but accessibility in the sense of making content accessible for people with, you know, various functional variations, I think is the politically correct denomination. I heard you mention sign language at some point, but accessibility goes further. Is that a particular challenge for this kind of multimodal AI-generated content?
Absolutely, because that involves also some, let's say, more personalization of the content that you receive. And one of the things that is currently trending too is how to give people what they need at the moment that they need it. This is particularly rising in the world of learning and education, where AI is helping facilitating this learning divergence, these different ways of learning, through voice only, through sign language, through imagery, and in different ways. So, and I think that's something that we can do now that we couldn't. It doesn't mean that because we could, we have to do it. But I think it's important to evaluate these advantages that the generative AI is helping us to address in terms of providing the content you need at the moment that you need it. There is, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Khan Academy, but Sal Khan is a precursor of this in terms of creating hyper-personalized learning experiences. Is a tutor. There are some sort of Socratical type of questions and answers that help develop in that way. And it's very much ethically constructed too, with parental guidance and control. And I think that's a very good use of this technology, particularly in terms of accessibility. You know, we have neurodivergency everywhere.
And for me, like, these past few days were super impressive. I was not that familiar with clear language. Can we switch to the pyramid, to the presentation for a second? I just wanted to touch on a few things, because, and it got me thinking, like, first of all, how to evolve this model. And if you consider this model, there's factual, ethical integrity, communication, coherence, experience, engagement, and sorry, I misclicked here. And so there's many aspects that actually would fall into different boxes. The cultural inclusiveness, for sure. But the starting element for clear language is think about your audience appropriateness. So that's the box at the top. So the clear language does not neatly fit into one box, and I don't even think it should fit into just one box, because it's much bigger, right? That's much larger, all-encompassing approach. How do you use plain language? What does it mean? So it's the naturalness of expression. I mentioned some of the other ones. So, but it's certainly a lot of food for thought for us. And there I did see there was a question in the Slido, we could go back, asking, is this open source or is this accessible? Yes, if you go to mmqeval.org, it's under construction, but the model is there. We describe the dimensions. We suggest the Likert scoring, etc. So it's something that you can absolutely adapt freely in your own use.
Correct, and it's on GitHub already. So.
Yeah, thank you. Should we check some other, or no, maybe I'll let me. Yeah, please, a question.
Yeah, there.
Oh, okay. Thank you for taking up accessibility, because that was exactly the word I missed in your model. I just wanted to point out that it is not the good way to go to look at people with disabilities as separate categories. If we really want to be inclusive, we should make, like, for instance, inclusive subtitles, which can be perfectly for the whole audience. So you don't need just separate ways of making your video. You can make perfectly one video for all of them together. And the same works with plain language. It can be fit perfectly for the whole audience, for everybody. So same for audio description. Make them from the start completely exclusive, and it will benefit the whole audience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for this comment, and this is exactly what we were discussing lately. So where does actually accessibility fit into? And currently, as Pavel has indicated, we are looking into how to make it visible that this belongs to the project specification from the day one or moment one. So that it's clearly called out that it should be implicitly present in multimodal content. It goes also over to standard stuff, to sign language, because this is yet another huge area of something that is being requested quite a lot, and also a lot can be achieved with AI today. So these are new perspectives we are looking into when we are expanding our framework, and it's really a framework that everybody can just use according to their needs.
I see a question here. Could you please explain with a practical example what you mean by error creation transformation phase before evaluation? Why do we need it? That was what you were referring to in the very beginning.
So currently, we think in terms, when we think about evaluation, this is the rubric that has been here for ages in various like variations, modifications. We can talk, it started, I don't know, with LISA, with DQF, with MQM, with ISO. We think in the terms of error categories, error dimensions, error categories, or use whatever labeling or terminology is close to you. Now, we need to understand that the taxonomy and the definitions were designed or defined primarily with the focus on evaluating the quality of a translation, because historically we were only looking at the text, source and target. With the advent of AI and with the democratization of content creation, we believe that the traditional error categories can be also seen from newer perspectives, and so their definitions should remain in its core, but then can be adapted to various and practical use cases. Again, an example from my experience months ago. I was working with a client to define specific error categories for AI evaluation. Is it the traditional ones? Is it the new ones? Where do we put hallucination? Where do we put categories that clearly relate to AI behavior? Is it our discussion with Ingemar? Is it a root cause or is it an error? how do we categorize it and what do we do with this? So this is just an example of how do we have to think about what is an error for us in the particular evaluation scenario when talking about risks and when defining the requirements, so that we are clear and also translators and language professionals are clear, because we may understand what we want, but if the language professional doesn't understand it, be it the translator or the linguist or be the evaluator, then we have a big problem.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the floor? Yes, please. Yes.
Katka, Pavel, Agustín, thank you very much for having the intellectual courage to actually tackle such a complex evaluation framework. When I say complex, really the complexity of it is striking. And since I'm a big fan of it, I immediately think about its practical application and scalability. So my question to you is a bit technical. Given the need to decompose the original, kind of the holistic product into different dimensions, evaluate them separately, presumably at a different scale. If you do text, it might be segment-based. If you do video, it might be like holistic. Do you, and presuming that you have already piloted it, can you give us a hint where to start, how to start building a tool or a platform that can support this? Because obviously just having hundreds of Excel spreadsheets circulating around is not going to bring us the results we want. So just an advice how to start to implement that.
Sure, Marina, that's a great question. Thank you for that. Yes, I piloted this. What you saw in the evaluation results was actually the result of the whole, let's say, pipeline, as I call it, of this. And I started to try to look for different evaluation tools that existed, and I wanted it particularly to be open source. So I started exploring machine learning models that would help me, for example, describe the music, describe the audio. How would it actually describe it in parameters that I could then transform into something more like verbal? And that's what I call of the transformation and then the normalization. So we can have everything in writing. And then started layer by layer using different machine learning models to actually transform what was there in audio or video or still image format into a representation that then can be transformed into something more like a description of it. So that's kind of where I started. And of course, having all these different layers already transformed into values and parameters that will be very descriptive of the audio, of the video, of the imagery, then describe them, put them together, and try to understand the coherence. So that's what I would start, is look for solutions. And in my case, I use Hugging Face, which is, you know, it has many models available. And then I started transforming the layers and then using after that descriptors of the parameters and transforming into these descriptions.
And I can add, so in the pilots we've done at Acolad, I noticed like one thing, you might remember the slide with the 3 circles overlapping, and it's really important, the input. By the way, I'm not telling you, oh, you need to be or you should be doing AI gen to create videos, but we have clients who want that. And they see benefit in, I don't need translation, I can generate across 10 markets in one go. The inputs should not be underestimated. So it's defining the cultural characteristics of the market, defining who your audience is, defining the product facts so that it can be checked for factual correctness. So that's why we included that input circle there. The inputs are just as important, and paying attention and defining those properly if you do go with the generative AI path. Just as important as the output as the intent. That's why the model, the philosophical underpinning of the model is that the quality is at the intersection of these three things.
Absolutely, and Pavel, it's a great point. And actually, it's very much related to the third question that I've seen there in Slido, which is high quality training data guarantee for, for quality output? And that's when I refer to we have to hold the reins of AI, is particularly with the input that Pavel was describing. We have to provide a rich intent, but a descriptive intent, a really, really descriptive intent. One of the key aspects, for example, that I see that is super important is terminology. I cannot emphasize more the need for never asking AI to come up with new terminology. Please, never. Because it's going to give you something, well, good luck with it. Terminology is so critical to get right. And I think we must ensure that. So that's an example of we need to feed these creation models with the right input to make sure that it, one of the things that we were doing too is like if we are doing it for a product, well, you need to tell the truth about the product. You're not going to come up with features that don't exist. So there has to be a product truth element. And those are those descriptions that can be specified in a way that machines will understand. And the results seem to be very favorable.
Yep. So in our case, we were limited by the requirements of the client, to answer your question, Marina. But we are also looking into how to build a framework that allows us analyze the individual outputs in the individual phases, because the video or the AI-generated content we are getting for analysis and then for being tweaked to comply with the requirements for the individual markets, it's quite long. It's, for instance, up to 10 minutes of a video. So you cannot just afford doing this holistic evaluation. You have to do some tweaks on the way how the content is created. We typically work within the environment of the AI generation tool. So there is many options there, how one can tweak the content and then what can be done in terms of the data collection within the content. And of course, currently we are looking into how to work with the data that is being input into the AI video tooling and transform it into, say, dashboards or formats that can be shared with the linguists. And then, of course, how to improve the actual measurements of evaluations. Which brings me to the question, will mapping quality scores to risk evaluation be sufficient? Again, in my view, we are too score-centric in our industry. We have a strong tendency to count errors, count penalty points, and then convert everything into a number, and based on a number we say it's good or it's wrong or it's what. In my experience, it's important to have data, but also data have to be correlated with other inputs, which is also the perceptions of the users, and those can be collected through different surveys, tools, through different methodologies, so that only when we really have the hard quality data and then we have this subjective feedback, we have a complete feedback loop that allows us to drive improvements.
Thank you. Yes, please.
If I understand correctly, Agustín, then you are saying that you use MMQ-eval in two ways. One is automatic and one is humans annotating the quality?
I think what we intentionally did is that the model is agnostic to the evaluation type that you want to use. Obviously, if you want to scale this into, a model that helps an LSP or someone who's producing a lot of content, it can be automated. But at the same time, the evaluation criteria, can be done by humans. And sorry.
Now, because in my experience, automatic evaluation, machines tend to favor machines, if you know what I mean. So even if you apply this model in an automated way, maybe there is a bias there, thinking, oh, these videos created by machines are wonderful. And
Well, let's say that machine can help you with the scale of the job, but it should not be just overlooked. What I mean is that there needs to be human evaluation.
okay.
My question is indeed related to ethics. How can a machine really evaluate the ethical aspect of a video? Just an example. You feed machines with bodies of naked women, and then we have these videos of celebrities which are shown naked, and these videos are machine created, created by artificial intelligence. It has happened, we have seen it in the press. So how can a machine evaluate that this is not okay?
Right. It's a great question. And I think that it really depends on how much effort those platforms are putting into evaluating and validating those videos. We have this unfortunate decision by many of the big tech providers in not putting any layers of blockage, any layers of risk management, and they are just, and this is, I'm talking about this in my personal opinion. They completely remove any type of filtering just because of what they call free speech. What they call free speech, okay? I definitely don't agree with that. I think that, yes, it is possible. And it is possible to detect all this with the right inputs, with the right parameters, with the right intention to validate them. But I think the main problem here is not the machines cannot detect them. It's just that whoever is allowing for that is certainly just looking away.
I would just add, again, I'm not advocating for people to use this without any human involvement, but there's elements that help if that needs to be done at scale for some reason, because you normalize, you transform the video, and the AI is pretty good to honestly say, oh, this is a video of a naked person doing XYZ. And then you ask in the next step, okay, please evaluate against this metric. How is this description of what's happening in the video appropriate given this was my intent, this is my audience, and so on. And again, the LLMs do tend to do, I feel like, I don't know why I'm defending LLMs here, but in practice, they would tell you, oh, this is actually not appropriate for what you're doing. And I also want us to be honest about what we're doing in the translation space. We are using machine translation, NMT, LLMs, and then we're using other LLMs to evaluate the quality of that, and it shows you, oh, this is 95%, you're good. And the translator goes like, oh, this is good, I can move to the next segment. It's not very different. We are using AI to evaluate quality of AI, and I was hugely against that, like I think 2 years ago, and over time, I did change my mind because it is true that you ask one AI to create a translation, you ask another AI through different prompting to evaluate the quality. You do get findings that actually point out the errors. So it's not so different. I want to say again, I am not here to be telling you, you need to be using AI for everything. What I'm trying to say, we made the model, the framework to work for humans, but we made it in mind so that when people want to automate it, there is a way to do it.
Pavel, you are absolutely right.
That's AI speaking.
Absolutely agree with that. That basically, again, if you look at the risks, we also need to think of the consequences or the AI involvement. We also need to always think about the consequences. And again, it's about us, how we're able to spread the word, to educate the world, and to educate our clients. Us as the language professionals, I believe that it's one of our utmost responsibilities to collaborate with the clients and help with the kind of gentle and diplomatic education. And over the years of my engagement with many big brands, I have made the experience that it's almost always well received if it's supported by facts and if it's like formulated in a language that your client or the other party is able to understand.
Any more questions from the floor? No? Yeah, please.
I can take the top one from Slido, and I use a slightly different term from Agustín. It's okay to disagree in the AI religion space, I think. I use the word remix. From my perspective, AI remixes the content that it's fed. And we are at a stage where it's remixed content, so it's very postmodernistic remix that we're getting into. I think there are papers about does the synthetic content degrade or not degrade quality of LLMs. I don't want to get into it. I will say one interesting thing. I used to play chess. I still like chess. When you have a closed system like that, where the machine can play against itself and reinforce, it gets better by itself and it can come up. And we have seen machines come up with new styles of playing chess that people have not come up with or not as successfully. But to my knowledge, we have not seen it in the space of language and creativity, because language is different. It's not a closed system. When the machine is playing against itself, it can invent new things. There is a very clear goal. When we communicate as human, that's a uniquely human thing. Will we see in the future where it can get better from its own synthetic data? I don't know. That's a good question.
So synthetic data is basically remixing what exists too. So in a sense, it's that. And that there could be degradation, yes, it's not well done, of course. There could be degradation, for sure.
From a practical perspective, I would like to address the question that is on the top of the screen right now. Do you already have some productivity benchmarks, expectations for the evaluators? We've got nothing like set in stone at this moment. We're playing with that and testing it, because if the whole process gets decomposed, so we're looking into how or whether the standard translation quality evaluation metric is and productivity approach is applicable for AI-generated content, AI-translated content, and remixed content, and then what are other elements that have to be considered, because very often the evaluator is not only asked to evaluate the content, but they are also asked to fix the problems, which means work within the tool. And then they have to differentiate between fixing the errors, which will then be visible as part of the subtitles, and then as part of the voiceover, they have to go back and introduce errors in a way so that the AI properly understands how to work with the tonality and naturalness of the language. So such metric is like very challenging to be defined, and this is exactly what we are looking into as part of our experiments. Currently, I have to say that clients are very open to this discussion, and this is well received, that it's something new and we have to figure out what's the right balance, because it requires a lot of, say, cognitive investment from the linguist as well, and the linguist has to switch gears and thinking patterns when working on different tasks as part of the AI-generated video evaluation and improvement process.
And I know we're at time. I just want to leave you with one thing. We've been saying AI, AI over and over, but this framework is for multimodal content. You can have a fully human-created video with sign language and subtitles and music and narration. That framework is not just for AI-generated things.
Thank you so much. The takeaway my takeaway from this is a bit in line with what Marina said. It's commendable, the courage to get to grips with this really challenging endeavor. But it's very important, it is necessary, as you say. And I'm very encouraged to also big tech disruption is something positive in big tech. It's even the business model. And with the risk that you threw the baby out with the bathwater. And I'm really encouraged to hear your more transformative approach, or to not throw the baby out with the bathwater, but rather see how we could expand what already exists, and the kind of accumulated methodologies and thinking, which not. Yeah, so I think our panel deserves a big applause. Thank you so much.